Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me now? Looks like we've had a technical difficulty on the live stream. What a surprise. Well, it is good to see everybody. Can you hear me? All right, perfect. I don't know what's going on there. I guess once again, I'm treading into ground that I can't tread into when it comes to movie reviews. I found it very interesting when I tried to post things on Twitter, and all of a sudden I got that alert that I was posting controversial things. Yes, I guess talking about The Last Starfighter, Dune, and Clash of the Titans. That's just not stuff we're supposed to be doing. So, all right, well, let's get the screen share going, and I'll issue greetings to everybody. I'm not going to forget that because everyone's such a big fan of it. All right. Should have Harry Hamlin up there right now. All right, let's see who we got. Quantum Paradox, good to see you. Chassis Nix, welcome. Adam, good to see you. Don, welcome. Andrew, thanks for joining us. K-Pop Trashu, I like that. Angelo, good to see ya. Inanna Ishtar, welcome. Chef Mike's Roundtable, Amanda Velasquez. Jamie, good to see ya. Hey, Wendy, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Adam Baum, good to see you, brother. Mr. Beast fan, welcome. Hey, Crypto Alchemist, good to see you, brother. KC933, welcome. Carl Spitfire, welcome. Good to see ya. Thierry Lafranjour, joining us from Belgium. Thank you for joining us. Sky Sage, welcome. Dustin Hayes, good to see ya. Easy Money, welcome. Hey, Robert, good to see ya. Shelly Boom, welcome. Laura Painter, good to see ya. Stephanie Campbell, thanks for joining us. Hey, Many Fires, good to see ya. RB, good to see ya. All right. Well, I think I've said hello to everybody. Hey, Benjamin Franklin. Well, it's great to see everybody. Oh, well, I'm sorry, Fish. Let me make sure I get you there. Gotcha. Good to see you, Fish. I don't always know if it shows up right away. Hey, Pete, good to see you. Yeah, looks like the whole gang is here. That's wonderful. So we're going to talk about 3 foundational movies. And the reason I call these foundational movies is that 2 of these movies were from 1984, and we're a good 40 years past those. Hey, Sean, good to see you. And, you know, I think it's important to say hello to everybody. Hey, Angel Luck. And the reason for that is because you're all here for a live stream, and the point of a live stream is interaction. It's not just to do a regular video. You know, there's a lot of content creators who opt not to do live streams for whatever reason. Now, I'm not castigating those content creators. It's a creative decision. But my creative decision, oh, I didn't know that, Pete, is that I prefer to interact with people. I enjoy interacting with people. So anyways, it's good to see all of you here. And we're going to start with Clash of the Titans. Now, for those of you who've been watching the channel for a while, Clash of the Titans, 1981, is one of my very favorite movies. Yeah, thanks, Quantum Paradox. I appreciate that. Hey, Sarah, good to see ya. Well, I'm glad you could join us, Wendy. So by all means, make all the comments, talk amongst yourselves as we go. I'll try to stay as focused as I can, but I'm just going to be honest with all of you. I am emotionally compromised by all 3 of these movies in different ways. And thanks, Brother Adam. I greatly appreciate that. And what I really want to say is the reason I'm emotionally compromised by these movies is I believe these movies have great stories. I believe they have great acting. And one of the reasons why Clash of the Titans is one of my favorite. Hey, Sovereign, thanks for joining us. Well, that's good to see. I appreciate that, RB. And I think it's just that difference between someone who prefers more of an interactive engagement with somebody as opposed to just sending out content. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, like I said, but anyways. Oh, Sean, you're getting ahead of us there. Yeah, the Medusa scene, it was really good, and it's still good to this day. So anyway, let me see if I can get this picture a little bit better for y'all. There, can you see that a little bit more? Okay. So we got actor Harry Hamlin. Clash of the Titans came out in 1981, and it is the translation of the classic Greek myth. Now, there's a lot of controversy already about this movie because some people say that they didn't capture the myth so well, but I always thought that they did. And here's the thing, whenever you translate anything, whether it's a myth or a novel to a movie, you've got to make some compromises because you're changing storytelling formats. Yeah, I agree. The Medusa scene was epic. And the less said about the remake, the better. Okay. Yes. If you want to hammer me up and ask me about the remake, go ahead. But I will tell you that when I saw the remake to this in 2010, that's when I realized that remakes and reimaginings were not for me. Maybe it's just a personal thing. So I'll just leave it at that. It's all good, Chassis. It's all good. And I understand that. And, if you don't like these movies, that's perfectly fine too. Maybe you don't. Or maybe you do actually prefer the remake. And if you do, that's okay too. It's all right to have dissenting opinion. I'm just sharing my opinion with you. So, yeah, I should have made that call as well, PMC. So, anyway, it was one of the first big films for Harry Hamlin. Some people say Harry Hamlin may not have been the greatest actor and he couldn't really emote, but I thought he played the part serviceably enough. And I think for what his character was written, he was well cast for it. So, again, just my opinion. Hey, Kathy, good to see you. Yeah, I wish I didn't know there was a remake either. Hey, Miss Honeybee, good to see you. Yeah, let's not speak a remake. So, anyway, story involves Harry Hamlin, who portrays the mythical character Perseus. He is from the kingdom of, oh man, I'm drawing an actual blank here. But his father was Acrisius and what was it? Argos, wasn't it? Why Argos was doomed. Yeah, I'm shooting from the hip there. That was the kingdom he was from. Yeah, there was a lot of wonderful things about this movie, and I don't want to devolve into a full plot recollection of it, but I always thought that in the opening scene, when Perseus, whose mother had gotten with Zeus, and if you're not familiar with Greek mythology, Zeus is the head of the gods, and he's played by Laurence Olivier quite well in the film. Thanks, Capital. I appreciate that. Because of the fact that Danae, who is Perseus's mother, got with Zeus, his father, Acrisius, was not happy about it and ordered her set into the sea with Perseus. And so Zeus ordered the city of, was Argos, wasn't it? Yeah, destroy Argos. And so Argos was destroyed. And you actually see it. And it really shows a bit of a reset, but there's a lot of interesting aspects within this film. Hey, Cynthia. A lot of things that we don't think on unless we have our newer eyes. Now, here we have the character of Calibos, and Calibos is the son of the goddess Thetis, and here he's depicted with Andromeda. What I always thought was interesting about Calibos was the way they filmed him in this particular movie, with the fact that they used a combination of Ray Harryhausen. He was the special effects master, the stop motion special effects, if you remember that. Yeah, I think, was it? No, remember he Zeus transformed himself into a glittering shower of gold, and then he seduced Danae. And then her father was quite jealous about it because he'd locked her away because she was so beautiful. That was the story. Yeah, a classic satyr, no doubt about it. And portrayed well by British actor Neil McCarthy. And he had a bit of a condition that left him a little bit taller. I don't remember the exact name of the condition, but he was always a great actor. He played the Captain General in the Shogun miniseries as well. But he does a wonderful job. Thanks, Miss Honeybee. I appreciate that. Oh, yeah. Don't worry, Kitch. We're going to talk about Boo Boo the Owl. But he does a wonderful job portraying Calibos. It's a great acting performance, and he's also a wonderful antagonist. And one of the themes we'll get when we look at these movies is that we had good antagonists. And in the remake, it really ticked me off that I think they had Calibos be Perseus's father, which made absolutely no sense. So, oh yeah, Alibaba and the Golden Fleece. Yeah, we'll be getting to that one too, Fish, in good time. That's a good one down the road. I don't want to forget about that. So, yeah, and what I'll say about the miniatures and the stop motion is they always felt more real because you actually have something to interface with. Okay, now I think computer generated imagery can be done well and done correctly. It was proven in Lord of the Rings, but I think it's also just become a little bit of an easy out. So, anyway. Now, here was the big difference between the original and the remake, and I'm just going to highlight this main difference. The way the gods and the goddesses were depicted in the original, because they set a lot of the plot motions in effect, and that's how it's supposed to be. Yeah, exactly. And you got Laurence Olivier here, and you've got a slew of other very, very famous, classically trained performers in this whole scene right here. For example, does anybody recognize Maggie Smith? Well, she's not really depicted very well here, but that's her. She plays the goddess Thetis. And you've got Susan Fleetwood as Athena. And of course, you got Laurence Olivier as Zeus. And oh, yes. I do believe that's Ursula Andress there as Aphrodite. How fitting. But what I found unique about it was the way that, oh, yeah. the way that they had all these wonderfully trained actors and actresses portraying the Greek gods, and it added so much credibility to the story. Yeah, exactly, Sky Sage. And that's actually one of the main themes is you think that the gods and the goddesses or the deities or whatever you want to call them, they actually had control over the population. But you find out in the end of the movie that it seems that Zeus set something in motion that was to allow humanity to free itself. That was to develop people who felt courage and imagination. And in fact, it's in the closing dialogue. And if you rewatch the movie, those are the main themes. And oddly enough, it's themes between the lines which do not seem to be emphasized in our current remakes so much. Yeah, don't we all, Carl? Don't we all? So, yeah, it is all very whimsical. Yeah, you see that, don't you? There was also, and I don't know if I got any images of it, but I liked how they had the whole setup with the gods and goddesses had the little setup. Zeus had his little stadium or his coliseum or whatever you want to call it, his theater, and then he had figures which represented every single mortal, to include Perseus, who is technically Zeus's son and played by Harry Hamlin, and he's supposed to be a bit of a demigod himself, although he doesn't have any special abilities. He's just a regular human. Yeah, exactly. And these are just the kind of films that you don't really see so much anymore. And I think that's a bit of a tragedy. Now, this is actually an image from one of the filming locations. Yes, that's another thing, is that this actually used filming locations. And what do you find interesting about this image? Ah, absolutely right, Jamie. Will to power. You're right. Yeah, maybe so. And maybe that's what they're a reflection of, Audie. That's a very good point. Hey, Art, thanks for joining us. Hey, Alpha Maze, good to see you. Yeah, it does look like a melted city. Aren't these the gods that built the inherited infrastructure we now occupy? They could well be. We don't know for sure, and especially when you look at the Gnostics' ideology about it. So, anyway, this is a filming location where they staged the Stygian witches when Perseus had to go on the quest to find the way to defeat the Kraken. And yeah, that's part of it. And there also seems to be a bit of a focus on retreading everything that was already done. I didn't realize back in 2010 that the biggest issue with all this was the fact that they're just remaking or redoing everything. And even when they say they're not, they're still retreading timelines, such as Star Trek. Why are we still in Captain Pike's era? Just don't ask, okay? Yeah, it does look like a melted castle. But if you go back and you rewatch Clash of the Titans, 1981, you'll see a lot of these actual filming locations. Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's what the Kraken represents too. The floods, the tsunamis, the way that Argos is destroyed. Hey, Brian, good to see you. No, that was Vasquez Rock. That's in California, but that's a pretty interesting looking site itself. I might have to do an exploration on that one. So, yeah, you got it, RB. Do not ask questions, just consume the product, and you're going to like it. So here's an image of the Kraken. You got Andromeda down here and everyone lined up for the sacrifice. Now, the interesting thing about the story is that everything was set up, the plot was resolved, but then Andromeda's mother, Cassiopeia, decides to compare her beauty to the goddess Thetis, and Thetis gets very angry and directs that the entire city will be destroyed unless they sacrifice Andromeda. So that's really the crux of the plot, and Perseus has to find a way to defeat the Kraken, which there's no way known to man, but there is a way known to woman. That is the Stygian witches, and Perseus has to seek them out for their knowledge. And so I've always found this film very interesting because of the fact that it showed many of those overlapping plot lines, and it did feel like a real myth. Now, you can find plenty of archaeologists and people who try to deride this movie for some reason. What was always interesting to me was everybody in the archaeology department at the unnamed university I used to work at, they despised this movie. Never said anything about the remake, but they did not like Clash of the Titans from 1981, and I could never get a solid answer on that. Yeah, it does kind of look like the creature from the Black Lagoon, doesn't it? And that's a good comparison there, Casey 933. Let's go on to the next image here. So here we have Laurence Olivier. Ah, yes, there's his little theater setup, and then he's got his figures behind him. So you just got to bear with me. I go through a lot of images every single day. So while my memory is pretty good, I don't always remember everything that I put in there. But when you have someone with the voice of Laurence Olivier portraying Zeus, it just adds a lot of gravitas to the entire scene. And I always like the interplay with the gods. Now, in the remake, all we had was Liam Neeson saying a few lines. He was very minimally involved, and then all of a sudden Hades showed up. And look, I like Ray Fiennes as much as the next person, but come on, what a waste. How could you delete all the interplay with the gods? That's half the drama right there. And you might recall in the film Troy, they did that as well, the one from the early 2000s, which was quite unfortunate. And what you got there, Adam? Yeah, that's true. The Kraken, also represented as Leviathan. Yes, it all comes together, doesn't it? The mighty force of evil in the seas. Yep, that's right, Pete. And look, I like Liam Neeson, but I don't know what exactly they were doing in that film. They just completely deleted any of the interplay or the drama between the gods and the deities. So what was really the point? Why even have him in the movie in the first place? It just didn't make any sense. Now, this is actually what starts off, and I'd like to give a little bit of credit here. So you have Sean Phillips, and if anybody saw I, Claudius, she portrayed the lead in I, Claudius. Okay, hold on a second here. I'm losing my mind a little bit. But you saw I, Claudius. You remember Cheyenne Phillips, and she portrayed the wife of Augustus and was really the power behind the empire. So while it may just seem like it's a stage play, it's a wonderful show to watch. You got Harry Hamlin on the right as Perseus, and then Judy Bowker on the left as Andromeda. And what's really interesting is while it seems like they just have a little bit of a pairing, they actually develop a genuine chemistry. And that's something that you really don't see. I mean, you didn't really see any kind of chemistry between Perseus and the remake. And what was her name? Io. And Andromeda had what, like 3 lines? Hey, RB, are they? Are they? Yeah, I guess they could be. That's a good one. Hey, Lobo. Yeah, I know. I'm really going back in the day there, 1970s with I, Claudius. So, yeah, there's definitely a lot of connections with Leviathan and Lucifer. There's no doubt about it. So, oh, yeah. Hey, Jimmy, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Raffles, welcome. But anyway, this is the bonding ceremony, and what I really found interesting in this early of a film, although maybe it's just more perception, is the way that the characters are written. Judy Bowker plays Andromeda very well, and don't really see her in many films, but she managed to convey her with a great internal strength while at the same time having charm. Kind of the way that Margaret Kidder played Lois Lane in the early Superman movies. Just something that felt a lot more human. Now, here's another one of the scenes, and interestingly enough, this is where they filmed the Kraken scene where Andromeda was to be sacrificed to the Kraken. Oh, yes, very, very interesting terrain. Now, you may be surprised to know this is an area we haven't explored yet, but it's on the list. So, again, in the filming locations, which is where we see the connections to the old world. Now, since they're getting married in the Iowa State Capitol, you kind of wonder why they don't actually do scenes like that in the state capitals. You could really get away with it. Well, I always found it funny that they did Spartacus when they were at Licinius Crassus's estate. They filmed that at Hearst Castle, which also was Laurence Olivier playing that role. What are the odds? But anyways, some of the old world connections in this movie. So a lot in the characters, the strength of the characters, but then also the fact that they're depicting gods and goddesses. Yeah, I don't think you get any more old world than that. Now, the real question is, do the gods and goddesses, the gods, the deities, whatever you want to call them. Hey, Julius, thanks for joining us. Do they reflect a previous civilization? Do they reflect a higher state of humanity? Or do they reflect actual deities? I mean, you could make the argument that they reflect all three. It just depends how they're portrayed and what they really come down to. And that's what's brilliant about Clash of the Titans. I always love this scene where he finally meets the Stygian witches, and there's some great dialogue. Now, they're 3 blind women, but they have infinite wisdom. They're the only ones who know how to defeat the Kraken, and they recommend to Perseus that he needs to go on the quest to find Medusa's head. And as you see, they say here, you need to win it, but she's not going to give it to you as a present. So, well, thanks, Laura. I appreciate that. So, yeah, they do. And It's a good comment there, Carl, because yes, they were supposed to be scary, and that was back when we could scare people in much more direct ways, or much more implied ways too. There's a saying, "Show don't tell," but it seems like our show has just become we're just going to show you cool special effects, but we're not going to show you a plot or character development. So it seems to be what we go with. Good one, KC933. Yeah, that's true. Oh yeah, you got it. That's right, Julius. The eye, the all-seeing eye. That's what they had, and they passed around between the three of them so they could actually see what Perseus looked like. A young man, not plump but well built, because they have a taste for human flesh. So, as if there aren't enough problems that Perseus has when he goes to talk to them. Yeah, that's a good point there, Many Fires. And I think what you're really seeing depicted here is either a period after a reset or something along those lines. Yeah, you're right, Adam. They did reflect the witches there. I always like the way the performers did a wonderful job with the voices too, and they weren't augmented either. It was their actual voices. So, oh, Fish, you cracked me up. Yeah, probably very true. And if you think about it, that's what Clash of the Titans is a reflection of: somebody rebelling or somebody actually bestowing the power on humanity. Because the dialogue at the end by Zeus makes it clear that's what the whole story is about. I always like the symbolism in this movie. Yeah, not symbology, symbolism, because you have the scene where Perseus is fighting. They made up it wasn't an actual mythological monster. Hey, Dwayne, good to see you. Oh, yeah. It really is, too. And it makes you wonder why you could have that big of a disparity. Great comment there, Dwayne, because, yeah, 1981, 1984, and you've got completely different visual effects between Clash of the Titans and Dune. Oh, yeah. And good to see you, Andrew. And a lot of people do hate snakes. And of course, they bring it up in Indiana Jones. And he has this scene where he's trying to get his sword back to help some of his guards who are fighting with him when they're on the island trying to find Medusa. And they get attacked by this three-headed dog creature that isn't actually based on a mythological creature. And he has to try to retrieve his sword. And so it does depict actual challenge. And then, of course, he's also being hunted by Calabas at the same time, again, portrayed by Neil McCarthy. And that's a bit of a composite because they use Neil McCarthy in makeup, but then they also use the effects of Ray Harryhausen. So good to see you there, Steelhard Van Godless. Well, that's the whole point. We have a little discussion and you want to watch it again. So yeah, it's based on Cerberus a little bit there, Carl, but it's not an exact take for take of it. So I think it's something that they were looking up there a little bit more. Yeah. And it's funny because they lampooned Boo Boo the Owl in the remake, and then one scene later, they're riding giant scorpions and they're fighting a Medusa that laughs. Yeah, make of it what you will. So now, I really love the build up to the Medusa scene, and it's really intriguing. It gives you an idea of how you actually build tension, which seems to be a lost art in film these days because people just don't want to build tension anymore, it seems. Yep, that's right. Calabas living in the swamp, the marsh flies. And so they build up the tension when they arrive at the island when they have to fight Medusa. Oh, what do we got here? Yeah, maybe. But they take their time with it. And initially, Perseus thinks, okay, I know what to do. I just use my mirror shield. Judy Bowker playing Andromeda. And when she's up for her sacrifice, she handles it very stoically, not the typical damsel in distress, which I always thought was really interesting. It's me when I need a Snickers. Yeah, don't we all wish we just had a golden mechanical owl that could just talk us through all of our problems? So, yeah, it's collapsing, but somehow it keeps going. So, yeah, I think one of the myths. I'm not up on my Greek myth to be honest with you. I know that might be a bit of a surprise. So, yeah, and it's a bit of a you don't really see her in many other films, but she did a wonderful job portraying the character, and she had a lot of charm. Okay, here we go. The money shot with Medusa. Now, again, Medusa being a Ray Harryhausen special effector, I think they called them mythicals in the credits, so it was quite intriguing. But they did a great job building up all the tension in the scene. And when you actually see Medusa's reveal with the music, it's quite terrifying. And I don't think there's any comparison between the old one and the new one. Oh yeah, peanuts and lemonade. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. So, but it's funny because as soon as he gets in there, oh yeah, you're right, Magic. Yeah, Gorgon, no doubt about it. As soon as he gets in there and the fight starts, you get an idea of just how badly outmatched they are because one of his men gets killed, another one gets turned to stone, and Perseus just realizes he's absolutely screwed. Yeah, that's true, Chassis. She was in a lot of ways, and a tragic character, which they did reflect it. Amon, or however you say his name, the playwright that was played by Burgess Meredith, he actually talks about the tragedy of Medusa. So they don't undersell it in the movie either. That she had hooked up with one of the gods, and Aphrodite was angered about that. And so then they had her transformed into an apparition so horrible that any creature that looks at her turns into stone. Yeah, it's a very good point there. What's our real story? You're right. Maybe, or maybe just had access to the actual academic documents from that time or whatever records that they really are. Hard to say. Oh, what you got there, Adam Bob? Yeah, maybe so. You do wonder about that too, especially with the statues. It's something I need to explore a little bit more. Anyway, Perseus manages to use his shield, which guards his life, distracts Medusa, and he's able to behead her just barely, although she nearly gets the best of him. And so I really like the fact that they actually build up the antagonist back then too, because that's something else that we don't do now in our modern movies. Many of our antagonists are just a joke. Their motivations are a joke. They're incompetent, and then it becomes a battle of who's more incompetent. You know what? And I think there's a lot to be said for that, Julia. And you actually see that in other aspects as well. The whole jealousy concept, which seems to drive a lot of actions. Y'all should see some of the emails I get from random people, and you can get that concept. So, yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah, I agree, Don Don. It was a very exciting scene. And let's also call out something else with all three of these movies, just the soundtrack that they had with all of them. So, well, and it's come up a couple times, Chassis, and maybe they were. Some of these statues are really well done, and if you do scans on them, and I mean, we were talking about Mount Rushmore as well, so who knows what's really going on there. I haven't talked about Titans or the earlier Foundation eras yet, but we'll be getting to it. So, long story short, Perseus uses Medusa's head, turns the Kraken into stone, and I like to call out Pegasus. Yes, everybody loves Pegasus. Who doesn't like a flying horse? Hey, I am Kairos. Good to see you. Ah, good comment there. Yeah, they most definitely were puppet masters. And that's reflected in this movie quite well. And I think there's a reason why we don't see that depicted in movies anymore, whether it was Troy or the Clash of the Titans remake. You're not going to see the gods depicted as that. Now you'll say, well, it's because of the anti religious mentality that's swept mainstream society, but there's also a lot of other reasons for it. Ah, yeah. Maybe it's depicting something we're not supposed to see. Well, that's a good choice of one. But yeah, like I said, who doesn't like a flying horse? Yeah, and probably something with alchemy there too, Brett. We'll definitely have to look into it. So there we go, the money shot. Of course, I had a shot of Boo Boo the Owl. And of course, people try to say that Boo Boo was just trying to cash in on the droids from Star Wars, but Boo Boo actually plays a pretty significant role in the plot, while at the same time, he's not too intrusive. Like I said, I still think it was really in bad taste how they tried to poke fun at it in the remake. And then what do? They're riding giant scorpions and fighting a Medusa that laughs. Yeah, that's true. You're right. I forgot about that one as well. And that's really what's special about this movie. And even though we talk about the leap in special effects from 1981 to 1984 with Dune, I think this is what makes Clash of the Titans really a unique movie. Hey, there you go, RB, a steampunk owl. Absolutely right. Made when Athena did not want to send her own actual owl. And so Zeus didn't give her a very direct order. So once again, she managed to outfox the head of the gods by having an owl made to go down and be Boo Boo. Yeah, that's true. He did, didn't he? I forgot about that. But anyway, that's it for Clash of the Titans. So, a couple closing notes on it. I think what makes it a special movie, though, is there are numerous location scenes that show that it really is in the old world. It's also the fact that it has a real depiction of deities and how humanity interfaces with deities. But then, probably the most important part of the movie is the way that it shows how Zeus actually endowed humanity with creativity and imagination. And that was really what the plot was all about, creativity and imagination. Oh, yeah. Exactly, I am Kairos. And that's why it's a movie I can strongly recommend for that alone. So, all right. Well, if you couldn't guess, the next movie is The Last Starfighter from 1984. So, coming up on its 40th anniversary. Now, anybody and everybody was a gamer. Of course, we didn't call them gamers back in the 1980s because everybody hung out at the arcade. We all had a dream of being in this movie. And this movie really, really did a good job of reflecting some of those dreams that we had. Oh, yeah. Nope. We're not supposed to talk about them, anyways. Oh, yeah. 1984. And quite a transitional year for many different reasons. So, yeah, that's a good point, Sean P. They used a Cray supercomputer to render the special effects in this one. So, just to give you the plot synopsis, if you're not familiar with The Last Starfighter, it's a science fiction movie. A boy plays a video game in a trailer park, and, well, he's a college age boy, college age man, I should say. And he gets recruited by a Star League to fight visiting alien or invading aliens on behalf of other aliens. So, yeah, there are all kinds of movies in 1984. Now, oddly enough, this movie was made on a very limited budget, believe it or not, and it was one of the first movies to really use extensive computer effects. Now, Tron used some effects, but Tron actually relied a lot on animation. So, yeah, I suppose it does, doesn't it? So, but yeah, they did a really good job. And really, this movie is the absolute model of movie storytelling efficiency. So, yeah, you're right, Julia. It's true. It's true. Although I do recall seeing plenty of girls in the arcades back in the day. So, I mean, remember in Tron and Flynn's? uh, oh, yeah. Yeah, War Games that came out the year before. So, but this is one of the first movies that actually introduced computer generated images. Now, on the left here, you have Lance Guest. He plays Alex Rogan, the young man who's recruited to fight in the Star League. And he's recruited by this guy here, Centauri, who's played by Robert Preston. Interesting old world connection here. Robert Preston was in The Music Man. And The Music Man, older movie, where Robert Preston basically played a swindler or con man and very well, and really kind of plays the same character here. It's kind of a swan song to his career, so that adds a little bit of gravitas to this movie. The fact that he gets to call back to that character and then be an essential character in here adds a lot to this movie. So, oh yeah, I mean, you got a lot of good ones that you're mentioning there. Yeah, Flight of the Navigator and so many others. So, oh my goodness. Yeah, that's very true. It does come up, and it did come up back then too. Hate to say it, but it's true. Now here we have the Kodan Armada, and Dan Mason, the actor on the right here, is in heavy makeup, and he plays Commander Krill, and does a really good job. He does show up in a Star Trek: The Next Generation episode from the first season, and you don't even recognize him without the makeup. But he's got a great voice, and the actors that they had in this movie did a wonderful job with all the makeup that they were acting under. So, and I got to say again, they had wonderful villains in this movie as well. And then we also saw a beta unit. Oh, yeah. Remember back in the 80s when we were talking about how advanced cyborgs were going to be and how we were expecting to have all these cool things such as androids and so forth? Yeah, here it is 40 years later. I got a Roomba. Hey, does anybody else have a Roomba? That's as far as we've gotten. uh, really? Well, I hope you enjoy, Eric. Yeah, they're great movies. So, well, thank you, Shelby. I appreciate that as well. So, oh, don't worry, Fish. We got something special coming on that one. So, yeah, and I think that's also what we're talking about. Now, what are the old world connections with The Last Starfighter? You have a concept where you're looking at different worlds, different lands, It's really interesting when you think about a guy just jumping in a car and traveling across the stars, especially when we're told how far apart they were. Oh, yeah, Max Headroom. I might have to cover that one sometime. Oh, yeah, I forgot about the Android and Alienation. I'm going to look at that one again, too. All right, so one of the best scenes in this movie, they actually handle exposition really well. Exposition where they really do the world building. And they manage to do it all in about a minute and 30 seconds. When the main antagonist, Zur here, portrayed by actor Norman Snow, shows up and really lays out the plot about what's really going on. Oh, the Kurgan. Yeah, that's another good one. Merge with the never ending story. I think we're going to have to cover that one. I think there's a lot more told in the never ending story, especially when you talk about the concept of formulating a world with your thoughts and imagination as well, especially how that comes up with Bastion. So, great example, though. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, we don't need high tech robots, right? We just get the low tech ones. So, but I always liked it when Zur showed up and you get an idea of everything that's at stake and how they lay the plot out. Now, Alex is recruited to be a starfighter, and all the other starfighters are killed in the plot, and he's the last one left. And Lance Guest does a wonderful job portraying the character because he really seems like he's just a college kid who's suddenly been thrown into a really nasty military situation. And he probably drew inspiration from many unfortunate young men in the 1960s who were thrown in a nasty situation that they didn't really care about initially. Although he finds his will to fight, and he's teamed up with as he calls him, a gung-ho iguana, Grig here, played by actor Dan O'Hurley. Dan O'Hurley's had a magnificent career, and you ever saw RoboCop, he played the head of OCP. This is him under a bunch of makeup. So it draws those kind of old world connections with this film. And again, the villain Zur, played by Norman Snow, and the fact that he's built up really well. I also like the way that they seem to really think out this alien world, although is it really an alien world, or are these ultra terrestrials, or is this something else? Oh, Enemy Mine. You must be referring to that, Sarah Harrell. Are you talking about with Dennis Quaid and Louis Gossett Jr. as the Drac? Yeah, that was Enemy Mine. I think it was another 1984 movie, wasn't it? So many interesting movies that came out in 1984. Yep, that was the one. Oh, yeah, funny you mentioned David Bowie, too. Yeah, that guy's just swept with the old world. Yep, Louis Gossett Jr., and he played that role very well. I also like how Dan O'Hurley plays Grig, the navigator, because he always does this little like horsing cough whenever he's laughing. He goes like this. He does it all the time, and it's hilarious, and it's something that Dan O'Hurley came up with and really adds more to the character. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Catherine Mary Stewart, who plays Maggie, Alex's, well, she's his love interest, but at the same time, she also grounds him back home. And really, anything that Catherine Mary Stewart's in, she adds a lot of, we'll just say, luminosity to it, which is something we don't see added to a lot of movies to this day. Oh, yes. But it's funny because something else to mention about Last Starfighter. It was one of the first movies that I saw converted to full HD and then 4K. And I've got to admit, something about it seemed to be lost when it was converted to that high definition. I'm not really sure what it was or why, but that just seems to be how things roll. And then we have Centauri's rocket car here that takes Alex to Rylos. That's the name of the alien planet, the home of the Star League. The other interesting thing about the movie is it shows an old sense of community because it's set in a trailer home. That's where Alex lives, and all these people are just so excited because nothing happens there, and he's about to break the record on the Last Starfighter game. And imagine the whole town showing up for that. Oh yeah, and Catherine Mary Stewart was what was the other movie she was in? Night Flyers, which was a movie that was written by George R. R. Martin. And if it wasn't adapted in the movie, he said he never would have came up with Game of Thrones. So, little interesting connection there. Yep. So, just a lot of connections here with the Last Starfighter. And so much potential for world building, and so well done in a movie that's not even 2 hours long. I don't even think the running time broke 2 hours on this, but I always liked the design of the gun stars and how they built out the world and managed to make a lot with a little. Oh yeah. Yep, and she's still been very active too on the circuit. So clearly seems to be a down to earth person. You see her at a lot of conventions, and you see Lance Guest too. And hopefully they never remake this movie, and hopefully they never make a sequel to it, because really, I think the way it ended was perfect. So, yeah, and they'll say it's more like Star Wars because anything set in space was Star Wars, right? KC 9 through 3. Even the original Battlestar Galactica, which couldn't have been more farther from Star Wars than anything, but George Lucas he thought he owned space at that time. Guess he never saw Star Trek or Doctor Who, huh? Oh yeah, 1981 heavy metal. We'll have to cover that one. The Lok Nar. That's an interesting concept as well. I reviewed Dark City. Don't know if it's still up though. I'll have to check. Had some problems with some of the film reviews. I think I talked about that. So many different scenes though that depict wonderful human characters and what it would really be to actually go off and fight an alien war, and Alex being the last hope. And while it may seem cliche in some ways, it's really not, because the performances elevate the movie. Hey, Bear, good to see you. That's all good. Well, glad you could join us. So I think he was in it, but he had a very limited role, RB. Yeah, this is before he got cast as Wesley. Yeah, that's another interesting one, Julia. A lot of different messages with that movie too. I was like showing this image right here because this just shows you how Dan O'Hurley had to act when he was Grigg, because he's under so much makeup, and he basically pulls it all off with his eyes. I always remember this, how he's darting, looking all over the place. So, oh boy, you got me on that one. Cool channel name. Is that the one with Jennifer Connelly? Is that the one you're talking about? Yeah, it really was back in the mid 80s, no doubt about it. And it was like the beta unit where he actually takes off his head, and then his little brother Lewis comes in there because they replace Alex so he can go fight with a beta unit. That's the android. A little bit of humor there with the movie. Some of the alien designs in this film are very creative. I remember how Star Trek The Next Generation had gotten notorious for just using the old forehead aliens. Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know if I'd go that far. That's a little mean, but yeah, you could say he got a little typecast. So, yeah, that's true. It's a great book. I do not recommend the movie, What's Our Real Story, but I definitely recommend the book. And I dare say Orson Scott Card got the last laugh on the producers of Game of Thrones, because you might remember they tried to throw shade at him, and yeah, who got the last laugh, right? Yeah, doesn't it? So here we have our main antagonist, Zur, played by Norman Snow. Norman Snow is a classically trained actor. We already talked about Commander Krill, but I always liked how he had his scepter. And what's interesting about Norman Snow is he's only on screen in the movie for 7 minutes, and yet he makes the most out of every one of them. He plays the part almost too far, kind of like how Ricardo Montalban played Khan, but he doesn't quite go too far. It really makes it perfect, and it makes him a very credible antagonist. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's very true. Escape from New York. Well, I referenced it quite a bit actually when we talked about Statue of Liberty, because of how they talked about Liberty Island. So, without a doubt. This is just some of the special effects that you can see. So, what was unique about this is that since they used a Cray supercomputer to render a lot of the effects, this was really cutting edge for the mid 1980s. And it was quite a gamble they took to make this movie. So, it's kind of what stands out about The Last Starfighter. You can also say that our current focus on computer generated imagery owes its lineage back to this movie. So, yes, I have, Raffles. Yes, I have. And we're getting to that. And that's a great transition question. I've read all of them, to include the Legends of Dune series written by Brian Herbert. But since you brought that up, let's go ahead and transition to Dune now, shall we? Give me 1 second here. Present, share screen. And voila. Looks like Spaceballs. Yeah, that was a pretty funny one, wasn't it? So now we go to the piece of resistance and what this live stream is really about, the redemption. Yeah, isn't it, RB? But does it seem like they're still evolving, or does it seem like they've stagnated quite a bit? I don't know. I leave that question to all of you. Were you talking about the original Dune, or are you talking about all the novels there, Quantum Paradox? Because there were 5 originals by Frank Herbert. Little bit. I explored it way back when I connected Tolkien to the old world. I might have to follow up with that. I also did an exploration where I talked about what was it, the fall of Gondolin, the tragedy of how that was an old world tale. Yeah, I agree. So Dune, originally written by Frank Herbert in the 1960s, considered the best science fiction story of all time. Tried to adapt it into a movie. Alejandro Jodorowsky, director in the 1970s, quite an eccentric individual, was going to make a 14-hour long movie. Suffice to say, it didn't get off the ground. I don't think they filmed Dune in Iowa. They filmed it in Mexico City because they were going to get Ridley Scott to direct, but he wasn't too keen on it, the 1980s version, that is, because we'll just say Ridley Scott's not a fan of Mexico. Some people say he's an ethnicity critic. So, so David Lynch committed about 3 years of his life to make this movie in the 1980s, and it was under producer Dino De Laurentiis and his daughter Rafaela De Laurentiis. And the movie they made was a spectacular movie that unfortunately the studio didn't have any faith in, because David Lynch wanted to make his own creative version of the movie. And he had basically, I think it was about a 3 to 3.5 hour script and runtime that he wanted for the film. Well, the studio didn't have any faith in it, so they chopped it to pieces, and David was denied final cut. Well, maybe new would be a better term for that, I think, Quantum Paradox, because recent films has me questioning that. I don't know if you've all heard, but I'm not exactly the biggest fan of Napoleon, The Last Duel, Alien Covenant, Prometheus. Yeah, things haven't been going so well for old Ridley lately. And that it's funny you bring that up, Julia, because David Lynch was probably the only director ever who could really adapt Dune with all the unique intricacies or the weirdness in it. There is a lot of weirdness and there is some kinky stuff in the novel. And there's a lot of different aspects to it. Yeah, no doubt about it, Jamie. Eraserhead, yeah, David Lynch's first movie, and very interesting. But I want to say that I do respect David Lynch greatly as an artist, and I think he had a real vision. Prometheus was a good visual movie, Quantum Paradox. I mean, the direction that Ridley did on that movie was great. The writer they got for that movie is what tanked it. That's my honest opinion. So, we've been doing this long enough. You can get my honest opinions now. So I enjoyed it, but the plot was just a total misfire. That's my opinion on Prometheus. So this is the version with Sting, Shangly. Yep, and Sting actually did a really good job. And this is Kenneth McMillan as Baron Vladimir Harkonnen. So the first image, we have the main protagonist of the story, Paul Atreides, played by Kyle MacLachlan. His father, Duke Leto Atreides, portrayed by Jurgen Prochnow. And then on the right, you might recognize this face, Lady Jessica, portrayed by Francesca Annis, who portrayed Widow of the Web in Krull, a movie that we already looked at. And each one of these actors has wonderful, charismatic presence. I think this movie was very well cast. And then Kenneth McMillan here as Baron Harkonnen. Now, you're all probably well aware that there is a current version of Dune directed by Denis Villeneuve, and I think Denis Villeneuve made a great film with Sicario. His science fiction films, though, are a little bit heavy on brutalist architecture, a little light on plot, and as much as I wanted to like Blade Runner 2049, as much as I wanted to like The Arrival, as much as I wanted to like the new Dune, I didn't. And I didn't like them because they all felt like sterile movies. They didn't seem to have the imagination factor or the human factor that we had. And I think that this original Dune had that human factor. Exactly. What's our real story? CGI does not equal or exceed storytelling. And just a great example, I loved Kenneth McMillan's portrayal as Baron Vladimir Harkonnen. He was gross, he was disgusting, and he was half insane. Yeah, great one there, Jamie. I'm alive. I wish you could have heard what I played at the front of the movie. or at the front of the live stream, but naturally my volume gets zapped. So what are you going to do? But what I want to talk about with Dune, all the effort that they put into this movie with the set design. So here you're on planet Kaitan, which is home of the Emperor of the known universe, who sits on the Lion Throne, which is depicted back there. That's him with Bene Gesserit Cheyenne Phillips, who was also in Clash of the Titans, who was also in I, Claudius. But some of the designs and the miniatures on this, I mean, look at this. We got our old school Capitol building here. Good enough for the Emperor of the known universe. But just look at the interior design on this. Such wonderful imagination. And then, of course, we get to see a guild navigator, an alien creature, but it's actually a human that's been mutated by the spice melange, because that's what the spice does to you. That's the key material, or what do you really want to say? The key resource in the Dune universe. Everything's about the spice, although Frank Herbert wanted to talk about a form of hydraulic despotism. Basically, they need spice so they can navigate the space lanes. Yeah, that's a good series as well. The liquid that you see is actually liquid spice melange. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to see it, Wendy, because the first one gave me a bad taste, but I probably will because it's got Christopher Walken in it. So, yeah, maybe so. Maybe so. But this movie had all kinds of heavy hitters. So Patrick Stewart as Gurney Halleck, Max von Sydow as Dr. Liet Kynes, and Jürgen Prochnow, who's most famous for playing the U-boat captain in Das Boot. But wonderful actor, and I think he really gave a lot of sympathy and humanity to the character of Duke Leto Atreides. So, yeah. It's a good popcorn flick. What's Our Real Story? It's a good popcorn flick. Yep, and then oddly enough, in the new Dune, the most humanity he gets from Jason Momoa of all people. So I don't know if that's just the way they directed it, but yeah, I don't know. Oh yeah. Well, maybe not the version now, but maybe someday in the future. The other thing that's interesting about David Lynch's Dune 1984 is all the attention to detail that they put and all the costumes, the set pieces. For example, here you see a crysknife, which is a knife that's taken from a worm. So Arrakis Dune, the planet, has giant worms on it that produces these things. These are their teeth. Yeah, I'm Kairos. Good to see you. Yeah, Jason Momoa is in the new Dune. He plays Duncan Idaho. We'll get to him in a second. So at the beginning of the movie, you have Freddie Jones as Thufir Hawat. He's the Mentat, or the human computer. In the Dune universe, they don't believe in AI. Yeah, they actually outlawed and forbade AI. So they actually have people who take a special juice of Safu that basically turns them into human computers. So, oh yeah, yep, and that's saying something too, isn't it? But Freddie Jones is Thufir Hawat, and there's a really powerful deleted scene, and this is where you can see that the studio messed up Dune 1984 when Paul offers the opportunity to Thufir to kill him as payment for the many years of service to his family, and then Thufir pulls out his heart plug and dies. I don't even remember the name of the performer in the Dune remake, and honestly, Thufir scenes get deleted to essentially nothing. I mean, he's in the movie, but uh, nothing against the actor, but it's as though they just pulled so much of it out. He barely has any presence. And this is Jameis and the Fremen, and I also like the way that the Fremen were portrayed in the 1984 Dune. So now, I'm glad you brought that up, Raffles, because there's a lot of different versions of 1984 Dune. Which do I think's the best version? Well, the original theatrical release, which is going to be released in theaters on 2 days here in February, which is why I decided to cover Dune, it has a lot of the story deleted. And if you haven't read the books, you're not going to have any chance of figuring out what the heck's going on. You might get a little bit of an idea, but because of the fact that they pulled out so much of the story, you can't articulate it. Now, in 1988, remember they denied director David Lynch final cut. They re-released it to TV in 2 2-hour segments. And that's the preferred version for a lot of people because it has this prologue that's about 10 minutes long before the movie starts. Yeah. and it really gives you an idea of what it's all about. But there's actually a cut on YouTube that you can watch for free, done by Spice Diver, which is called Dune Redux. So you can find that, and that's probably the closest I would say to what David Lynch intended for this film. And it includes the powerful scenes where Thufir sacrifices himself for Paul, where Paul professes his love for Shani, says that he's not going, that that Arulin, the princess, will have nothing more of him than his name. Some of the powerful scenes. So, yeah, Albe Belt, and that is a common criticism. But the Sci-Fi Channel actually did a pretty decent adaptation of Dune Messiah and Children of Dune. And it's funny that you mention that because it's really in the novels that's where Dune becomes much more old world. Oh yeah, you didn't like the voiceover, huh, Adam? Yeah. Harrison Ford didn't like it either. You can tell by how his voice sounds when he did it. Oh yeah. True enough. But really the whole story of Dune is very old world when I gotta talk about this. So a lot of people focus on the pug, the Atreides pug. It only appears in a few scenes, but I gotta admit, only David Lynch could have Patrick Stewart charge into battle with a pug in his jacket, and only Patrick Stewart could make it look cool doing it. You might notice that Josh Brolin didn't try to pull this off in the new Dune. So yeah, just something I thought I would relay right there. Now, one of the things that got me about the new Dune, and there's something with the aesthetic in the science fiction movies by Denis Villeneuve. They seem to really lack a lot of the humanity. And dare I say, brutalist architecture. I remember when they have Josh Brolin as Gurney Halleck in the new one saying, Harkonnens are brutal. And I'm thinking, yeah, and all the architecture in this film is brutalist too. Now, back to the 1984 movie, some of the composites of special effects, which we talked about earlier, were quite incredible. So a mix of shots with miniatures and live action performers and extras, and it gives the scene a great feeling. Pugsley. Oh yeah, don't you worry, I am Kairos. We're gonna focus on that a little bit. Yeah, Ugg the pug. But I mean, the pug's only in the movie for like 3 or 4 scenes, and it's only in there for a second. So this is Gidi Prime. So a good combination of matte paintings with live sets, and again, you got the David Lynchian feel of just an industrial planet that's very frightening. Now, let's talk about the big elephant in the room, Duncan, Idaho. Now, Duncan Idaho on the left was originally played by Richard Jordan, and he was only in 2 or 3 scenes in the original 84 movie, although we suspect that a lot of his scenes were left on the cutting room floor. And the reason for that was that Duncan Idaho actually becomes the main protagonist in the later books in Dune. And in fact, he becomes one of the overall actual heroes of the story when the plot revolves around humanity trying to escape the control of prescience. So if you're not familiar with the overall Dune plots, you don't get any more old world than that because it's basically the story of how humanity is being controlled by the concept of people who can see what's going to happen in the future. And so therefore, when you can see what happens in the future, they don't really have any future because you already know what's going to happen. So there is no future. Oh yeah, the Gola from the Benny Tlilax. Yes, Benny Tlilax and the face dancers and all those other concepts. Yeah, Frank Herbert had quite the imagination. There's a reason why Dune gets pilfered a lot for other science fiction ideas because it is very imaginative. So Jason Momoa played him in the remake, and I dare say it's one thing they got right in the remake was the character of Duncan. So, but Richard Jordan, you might remember him from Logan's Run, and he played Francis, wonderful actor, died way before his time. And Gurney Halleck, Patrick Stewart on the left, and Josh Brolin on the right. I'm not sure where they were going with that armor look, but I didn't design the movie, so what are you going to do? Yeah, isn't it funny, Sarah, how that happens? I've made it a point to kind of step back and still enjoy movies for what they are. They may have, Adam, and it may have been something that motivated a lot of what happened, something that had hydraulic despotism behind it or hydraulic control. That's what Frank Herbert used as the founding idea. And there's actually a lot of aspects in Dune that actually reflect old world. Lady Jessica on the left and Lady Jessica on the right, Rebecca Ferguson on the right, and the original on the left And Francesca Annis on the left, she always had so much charisma in all the roles that she played. I was kind of surprised I didn't see her in more movies either. Oh yeah, let's talk about Sting. So a lot of people give Sting a hard time being in the movie, and it's funny because there's a story about how Patrick Stewart, when Sting told him he was in the police, Patrick Stewart asked him, "Well, which department do you serve with?" He had no idea about pop culture or the band The Police. So I thought that was kind of funny. Here's some different portrayals of the Emperor's soldiers, the Sardaukar, and this was a still from the original artwork on the left. On the right here was from Alejandro Jodorowsky's movie. Yeah, it looks like something from Death Race 2000, 70s movie. Here was from the sci-fi original Dune. Looks like they decided to go with the chef's hat look. But I always liked the Sardaukar in the 1984 film because they really felt like they had the actual look to them. So, yeah, I think he was great, Kathy. I agree. I mean, he played the role a little crazy and he really seemed like he could be the nephew of Baron Harkonnen. So, yeah, they probably did, Jamie, without a doubt. Release the Sadaka. No, yeah, set in space a little bit, but what's interesting about the Dune universe is how there's a little bit more of an inner space concept behind it. And so that was something that always had my attention with it. But and here's what I'm talking about with the Denis Villeneuve movies. I don't know what it is. Saw it in Arrival, saw it in Blade Runner 2049, and saw it in Dune. There's a lot of this lovely brutalist architecture everywhere you look. Nice straight lines. It's like being stuck in an office building. Okay, enough of that. Now back to the 84 film. I always love the scenes where Paul Muad'Dib was addressing the Fremen, and it really gives you a sense of scale that they had. Yeah, someone was probably inspired by the Fifth Element, Casey, no doubt about it. Do do do, da da da. Then we have Everett McGill here on the right as Stilgar. I featured him in a still with Ron Perlman in a video earlier this movie because you remember he was in Quest for Fire with Ron Perlman. I always thought Kyle MacLachlan did a really good job as Paul Atreides. The acting was spot on for him, and I think they really they took a risk bringing him in, but he did a really good job. Oh yeah, yeah. Everybody remembers the opera scene, that's for sure. Classic Art Deco, isn't it? Without a doubt. It's like here's the other scene. I mean, you've got some extras here. You got a painting when Muad'Dib is actually addressing the Fremen, but I always found these scenes very powerful, very artistically inspired. And then just the characters. So Kenneth McMillan is the Baron, Kyle MacLachlan is Paul Atreides, Sting is Fade Routha, Patrick Stewart is Gurney Halleck, and Francesca Annis as Lady Jessica. I always thought that it had a superb cast. I mean, nobody phoned it in. And let's not forget Brad Dourif as Piter DeVries. Okay, you got to give Brad Dourif some love. That guy never phones it in. Whatever he's doing, whatever he's acting in, he's all about it. Good one, Ishko. Good one. Yeah, and he was super gross in the book too. And nothing against, let me make sure I'm pronouncing the name properly, but if I'm not, go ahead and light me up on it. Stellan Skarsgård playing the Baron in the new one. He seems more like Colonel Kurtz bathed in oil. I like Kenneth McMillan. And it's a real tragedy that the studio didn't have any faith in Dune. I mean, they could have had a real wonderful film on their hands. Yes, the Fedaykin. Uso, these are 15 of our finest warriors that will serve as your guard, the Fedaykin. Gotta love that voice too. Yeah, without a doubt. Well, maybe. I guess it depends on what you look at, what the origin of the Harkonnen were. Very interesting, though. I'm glad you brought that up. The other thing I thought they did a wonderful job on was filming in the desert. In the original Dune movie, it feels like, yeah, along with many others. In the original Dune movie, it feels like they're really in the desert. And so I always found that one of the powerful aspects of it. And let's not forget that we had old Dean Stockwell there playing Dr. Yui. And In the remake, I barely even realized Dr. Yui was in the movie, but Dean Stockwell had quite a presence even in the chopped up movie. He certainly has a lot of presence in the 4-hour version or the 3-hour version if you opt to watch it. So, quite a major character in the story. Padishah Emperor Shaddam IV. Now, I'm trying to remember. They were going to get Salvador Dali to play the Emperor in Alejandro Jodorowsky's Dune. This is Jose Fuhrer in David Lynch's Dune, but I think they were going to pay him some unbelievable amount of money, the artist, to play the Emperor. So I don't know. Hopefully, Christopher Walken's getting an unbelievable amount of money to be in the new one. Here's more of the scenes from Gidi Prime. David Lynch's imagination at work here. Supposedly, this is the Baron's face. Yeah. Yep, and actually Dune is kind of what got him into Quantum Leap. I mean, he got there on his own merits, but just like Dune was what got Patrick Stewart into Star Trek Next Generation. When you see the Baron, remember the tooth. The tooth. The tooth. Yeah, it sure does, doesn't it? And actually a lot of franchises do. Whether it's Warhammer 40,000, where do you think they got that idea of the God Emperor Doom from? We'll get to that in a second. Here's some of the interior design, and I love the architecture in this, the Atreides castle. Gidi Prime, where you see the Baron getting worked on for his very nasty skin condition. And then you got Fade. And I also want to call out Paul Smith as Beast Raban. He's definitely very interesting in that role. Who do they have him? Who do they have playing him in the new one? Yeah, I know. You can't handle the tooth. That's a good one. Who was it? It's the wrestler who suddenly shows up in all of these Denis Villeneuve movies, but I'm forgetting it. Batista. That's it. Dave Batista. Silly, silly me. Yep. Yeah, here you go. So Paul Smith is Beast Raban and Sting is Fade Rautha. And really, you could see these two just being whack job brothers. I don't know why. It just works so perfectly. So again, looking at some of the other characters, and this is a good composite of images where you can see some of the design that they had, where it really felt like they were in the desert. Some of the architecture. Oh, look at that. Patrick Stewart sporting the long hair there. He's been out in the desert a little bit. But the costume design was really wonderful too, and that needs to be appreciated in this film. Toothsayers or Truthsayers. Yeah, you're right, Sky Sage. Let's not forget the Bene Gesserit. Very, very interesting. The training schools, the Bene Gesserit and the Guild. Something else that Frank Herbert put a lot of effort into. Yeah, no doubt about it. Now, here we have one of the guild navigators. This was originally a human being that was mutated by thousands of years of using the spice melange. And this is something that's been completely deleted from the new Dune movie from Denis Villeneuve. I don't know if he'll show it in part 2, but there were no navigators in part 1. It's really the science fiction aspect of it. So, yeah, they sure do, don't they? I think that was part of the look they were going for. Yeah, they really pushed that one hard in the 80s, almost as though they wanted everybody to do it, right? Now, the opening scene that I showed was with Paul and Thufir Hawat, the Mentat of House Atreides, and how Paul was willing to sacrifice himself to Thufir Hawat, but there's actually a deeper story behind that. I also like the depiction of the giant worms in David Lynch's Dune, 1984. We already saw that image. And again, some of the architecture when Paul enters. And let's not forget Sean Young as Cheney. You might recall that she was Rachel in Blade Runner. Yeah, the skullet. That's a good one. I'll have to remember that term. Oh, yeah. Gross blob of protoplasm. Oh, yeah. There was a lot of interesting looks in this. And no doubt about it. Yeah, the Atreides here with the battle pug. One of the 4 scenes that appeared in. Costume design was just remarkable, though, in this film. I mean, no costumes were left overlooked, and it really gave it that otherworldly feel. Max von Sydow as Liet Kynes. He's not in the movie very long, but again, it's another example when you get an actor with that kind of capability, you can add so much to a small role. Yeah, the Skullet. I'm gonna have to remember that one myself. Yeah, you're right, Rebecca. It was the battle pug, and it's funny because the pug makes it all the way through the movie. One of Jameis's sons is actually seen holding it during Paul's duel with Fade at the end. Yeah, I think a lot of people did. And, she was supposed to play Vicky Vale in Batman 89, but she hurt herself when she was filming a horse riding scene with Michael Keaton. So, oh, yeah. Well, and that was saturation from the spice melange. It turned everybody's eyes blue. Oh, yeah. He did play the devil in Needful Things, didn't he? I forgot about that. Riding the worms. Okay. Now, I thought I had an image of it, but boy, I don't know what the heck happened to it. So they had a device in Dune called the weirding modules. They were weapons that operated based on sound. Sound familiar? And oddly enough, they have larger handheld versions that would destroy large vehicles and add tremendous firepower to them. The weirding modules, they call them. And they operated based on sound. So much like the fascies or the larger fascies, and they could destroy large vehicles, buildings, pretty much anything with them. They were weapons that operated on sound. Now, it wasn't exactly an idea that Frank Herbert had in the original book. That'll be coming up in the future. That'll be coming up sometime in the future. We'll see how much trouble I get into for doing another film review, huh? Yeah, exactly. And I think that's one of the, as if the architecture, the story, the plot, and everything else. And that's something that David Lynch added in there with the weirding modules, turning them into sound weapons. And the Emperor even has a line about it. They have some sort of weapon with sound that's unknown to us, the weirding way. Now, in the novel, the weirding way was more of a fighting technique, and they do depict what's in the novel a little bit more in the Dune miniseries. But I liked it with the sound weapons. I thought that was a really unique aspect with it. Yeah, don't worry. I wouldn't think of doing that English dub version for Mad Max. So, well, I enjoy doing them, but the issue is, you know how it comes. There's some things you can get away with, and there's some things that you can't. So, yeah, you could just say Muad'Dib. Gee, what are the odds of that? Yeah, I guess I just can't say that, can I? Now, where Dune goes, and a lot of people mistake Dune because they believe that Dune is actually a hero's journey story. And it's really not. It's much more than that as you go into the later novels, especially with God Emperor of Doom, or God Emperor of Dune, which got borrowed by Warhammer 40,000. But you actually see the agony that Leto goes through, which is Paul Atreides' son, when he transforms himself into a worm and loses his humanity. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying it, Jimmy B-side. And ultimately, that's the sacrifice he has to make, becoming a worm, losing his humanity, and then living for thousands of years, which is agony in and of itself. Yeah, right. Yep. The God Emperor. And it's kind of funny because I know that I'm going off and I'm saying something I probably shouldn't be, but I don't think that God Emperor of Doom or God Emperor of Dune will ever be adapted into a film. If it is, I will be genuinely surprised because there is a lot of truth that comes from that portion of the novel. And really, Heretics of Dune and Chapter House Dune, the story really picks up. Yep, with the sand trout. Now, that is depicted in Children of Dune, the sci-fi version. And so, really, I think David Lynch and Rafaela de Laurentiis, hopefully I'm saying her name right, but if not, hopefully she'll forgive me. But just all the respect in the world because David Lynch devoted 3 years of his life. I think she devoted probably 4 or 5 years of her life as producer to really bring out this wonderful movie. And I strongly advise that, whether you're a sci-fi fan or not, to watch either the 4-hour version of it that's in 2 2-hour parts, or best watch the Spice Diver edit that's on YouTube for free. I think you get the idea of what David Lynch really wanted to put on screen. The fact that they denied him final cut, they betrayed him, and they betrayed her as well. And they really put a lot of work into making the best interpretation of Dune. And really, I think they deserve all the credit in the world for that. Now, a lot of people say David Lynch is kind of a weird guy or things like that. He's an artist and he's an individual, and I respect him for that. Yeah, exactly, Jamie. And really, even the making of the movie was about too many ideas about freedom and will to power. So, yeah, no doubt. But here you have James McAvee. So, if you're looking for my recommendation, what to watch, that's actually in Chapter House Dune, Raffles. That's in the very last novel. And no, I do not acknowledge Hunters of Dune or Sandworms of Dune because I don't believe that was the final story that Frank Herbert intended. Because his son, Brian Herbert, and then author Kevin J. Anderson coughed out some Legends of Dune books and then The Great Houses, the prequels of Dune, and then they tried to finish the story. But I don't think that's what they really finished. So I think it was Return of the Jedi, Scott. I think it was Return of the Jedi. Might be wrong, but that was in the early 80s. Irvin Kershner was always going to direct Empire Strikes Back, but I think David Lynch was offered the chance to do Return of the Jedi. And it's kind of interesting because, like I said, David Lynch gets dragged through the dirt a lot, but he seems like a very genuine guy, and he is a genuine artist. So you can watch it on YouTube, Ishko. I'll put a link here on the live stream afterwards, or I'll put it on the Reddit too, and then I'll put it up on the channel members page. But just look for Dune Spice Diver Edit. It should be about 3 hours long. Oh, it's okay. It's okay, Scott. I forget things all the time. I mean, this is a long time ago. Heck, 84 was 40 years ago already. So, uh, but I enjoyed Children of Dune on the Sci-Fi Channel. I think it came out in 2003. I didn't as much enjoy the first one that they did, but the one with James McAvee because he actually looks like he could be the son of Kyle MacLachlan and Sean Young, and so. Oh, yeah, I guess they did, didn't they? The Reddit's called Lucius Aurelian. I'll put a link on the community page as well, so you can all get there. So, yeah, that's a pretty trippy movie too. David Lynch is a very unique guy. But here you actually see Leto, Paul's son, after he's been exposed to the sand trout, and he's beginning his transformation into a worm. And at the end of Children of Dune on the sci-fi version, his twin sister talks about the agony he's going to endure living for thousands of years and losing his humanity. Oh, and they did portray the Guild on Children of Dune on the Sci-Fi Channel, so give them credit for that. Again, they just deleted that in the new movie. But yeah, if I was going to give you recommendations for what to watch, I would definitely suggest watching the extended cut of Dune. David Lynch wasn't happy about the 1988 version they did on network television. He had the writing credit changed to Judas Booth and then the Alan Smithy credit for director. And I don't blame him. I mean, they denied him final cut and then they were trying to put out the full movie that he wasn't allowed to release. So, yeah, kind of, doesn't it? But in any event, I hope you enjoyed this look at old world movies. I'll probably get away from this for a little bit of time and look to do some fresh. What you got there? Yeah, that's right. He was. I forgot about that. Tiger, thanks. I'll have to watch that again, actually. But I really think that these were wonderful movies, all three of these, and they each have their place in time. Hey, Sooner West, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, the Alan Smithy directing credit. Because honestly, the fact they denied him final cut and then they tried putting out a full movie, and then David Lynch got blamed for what the studio did put out in 1984. I mean, you can see why he was so jaded over the experience. So, yeah, by all means. There's a couple different ones actually we could do. Well, I appreciate that, RB. I appreciate that. So, hey, Subculture Vulture, good to see you. But in any event, it's been a pleasure discussing these movies with you, and I hope you enjoyed this live stream. And you all have a great rest of your weekend wherever you are. And thank you for joining me.